Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It is us, Dragon's Greed Gaming. You are joining us for our review episode of Wrath and Glory. We had a campaign that we just finished last week called Mork's Madboyz, and we're going to take some time tonight to talk about the campaign, the system, and a few other things in the game, just like we did with our Warhammer Gallows Geist campaign. But before we get that, as always, be sure you stop by the Facebook page and follow us there for all the latest news and updates about the show. Be sure to stop by Spreaker, where we host the podcast, and swing on by Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Leave us a review, preferably a 5-star one, to help us grow the channel. Get word out there. Tell all your friends to come listen to us and help us rise in those charts. We're still chugging away over in Lithuania, and we're still crushing it in Denmark as well. So thank you wherever you're listening to the show. We appreciate it. Still blows my mind we've got people across the ocean listening. That's really fucking cool. So thank you all. And thank you to a couple new YouTube subscribers. Be sure you stop by the YouTube channel as well. We put all of our podcasts there if you want to watch there instead of on a podcast platform. And we finally, by the time you listen to this, will have our first episode of Tale of Four Gamers finally out. We recorded episode 3 tonight. Episode 1 airs next week, which again, by the time you hear this, will have already happened. But check it out if you're a fan of old school Warhammer fantasy battles. Myself, Sean, Eric, and Brian, who's coming back to join us. We're diving into the world of Warhammer Fantasy Battles 6th edition. We're building up some new 1,000 point armies. We're documenting our journey as we build them, collect them, and paint them, and showing you our progress along the way every month. So some very cool stuff happening there. And we may dive into the world of 40k later this year with that, so stay tuned. And we're trying to test out some OBS recordings tonight, so maybe we'll finally get our mugs up for our podcast episodes as well. We'll see. So trying to expand everything. But anyway, we had a couple new subscribers here and there. I apologize, I don't remember the names. YouTube often does not show me names, especially if your account's set to private. I might see it when you subscribe, but I'm not always in a place where I can jot that down. So I know we had at least 2 subscribers the last day or two. So thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy what you've got to listen to, what we've got for you. And finally, be sure, if you'd like to support the channel even more, consider joining the Patreon. We had a change that we just put into effect last week. We've reduced the cost of some of our tiers. We've moved some things around and tried to give you guys a little bit better value for your time and money. So if you want to help put a couple coins in the Dragon's Hoard, definitely check that out on Patreon. It's Patreon/Dragon's Greed Gaming. You can get yourself access to our Patreon-only actual play series. We've got another Warhammer Fantasy campaign, a 4th edition that we've been playing through called Tales from the Old World, and you can go listen to that right now for free. You don't even have to sign up. You can check out the first episode and see if it's something you'd be interested in. We do those once a month for our, I think it's $5 tier and higher backers, or $4 it is now, $4 a month. So check that out. Got some cool characters hanging out in Uber's Reich and kind of seeing the fallout of our Gallows Geist timeline continuity and getting involved in the stuff that's going on, the political strife and upheaval as different powers are trying to assert their dominance over the city. So check that out, as we've got some really cool stuff going on with that. And we've got, 12 episodes I think we're about to get to, Sean? 11 or 12, something like that, we're about to record next week. So there's a few there for you to listen to. Check them out.
Just a few.
Yup. Anyway, let's just dive right in here. We're currently waiting for the Frog to join us. He's going to be a little late. He's got some family stuff going on. But Tyler has joined us tonight. Even though he's only been in a few episodes this campaign, he decided to hang out with us. So he's here as well. Otherwise, yeah, we'll just go through the cast really quick. Tell us who you are, who you played, and anything that you want to tell the listeners before we dive in. Whoever wants to start first, please feel free.
Hi, I'm Eric. I play Loktar, the Commando War Boss. And I am sorry I missed last week. Something had come up suddenly. But very excited to see hear how it all ended out.
All right.
Hi, I'm Sean. I played Peppa MD and Shorn Scar in his singular debut. Yeah. It was a great campaign. Had a lot of fun, and I'm curious to see what the follow-up session is like.
All right.
Hey, it's Kyle. I played Grave Squatcha, the Burna Boy, who I think got burned just as much as he burned other people. And yeah, this has been a totally hilarious and fun campaign. I had a blast.
Wonderful.
That leave me?
I think so.
Hi guys, I'm Tyler. I just played random bad guys on our few big battle episodes, but I definitely enjoyed hopping on as a guest star, and as a listener, I really enjoyed all the characters the guys created.
How many episodes have you listened to so far?
I'm about a third of the way through. You guys are about to go to the Feral Planet.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So yeah, I just got past when Grave Scorch got his leg melted, which was pretty hilarious.
That was from the Rogue Trader, wasn't it?
Yes.
When she shot him with the fusion pistol or something?
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty funny. It was pretty great. And then the subsequent trying to get him a new leg with Dr. Pepper, grab, this looks good enough. Just saw this on, or I think you guys were talking about just sawing a leg off another orc and just putting it on. It was all pretty funny.
And I mean, this is partly my fault too, Chris, but I should have rolled for the leg more. I completely forgot.
I totally forgot about it too. By the time I remembered, it was usually like the combats were over. I was like, I got enough shit to worry about. So
yeah,
it was good in theory, but just too much stuff to keep track of.
Fun mechanic. If there was a way to work it in, like if it automatically, somehow detected.
yeah.
That would be cool. But yeah.
Well, and I am your host, the Great Unclean One, and it's been a busy week as usual, getting this ready, getting stuff for Blade Runner ready, getting stuff for Merkboar ready, and continuing to work on my Chaos Army for Tale of Four Gamers, and recording our episode next week for Tales from the Old World. So pretty busy, but I'm getting back into the groove of things here. Still playing a little Jurassic Park Evolution 2 when I can, and finally started watching the Blade Runner animated series, Black Lotus. I got through episode 4 so far. I decided to just bite the bullet. I bought it on demand, so I have to just watch it on my my Magic Internet cable box thing from Xfinity, and it's cool. Although the voice volumes, the audio mixing is terrible. Whoever mixed that shit, did you even bother to fucking listen to an episode? Because the voices are so quiet compared to the rest of the show. There's one character you can barely hear. It sounds like he's whispering every one of his lines. Like, I don't know what the fuck they did, but I've put subtitles on because otherwise, like, the volume on the show is so loud that it's like shaking the house, like legitimately. So shame on you, whoever audio mixed that, because you did a fucking terrible job. And I can say that because I do audio editing and I know how to do that right. So anyway, yeah, but otherwise it's pretty cool. So interested in that. But we are here as we have reached the end of campaign number 2. I can't believe it. I never thought I would say I finished 2 campaigns in under a year's time of each other. That's pretty exciting. So Not something I've done often in my years as a games master and player. But alas, we have made it. We are, 7 months with 28 episodes. This is 29. So it was a little bit longer than I had anticipated. I was hoping for 3 to 6, but I think overshooting by only 4 episodes, all things considered, still pretty good. So, and I feel like we got to a decent natural stopping point. So, what we're gonna do, guys, tonight, we'll do a quick review of an overview of the last episode, and then we're gonna go through some questions I've thrown to the players, just like we did with Gallows Geist, and kind of pull the curtain back a little bit behind some of the things going on in the system. I guess we'll move it over to the system map here, and just kind of talk about that. If you guys want to hop into the Foundry game, you're more than welcome to, fellas. I do have it running right now, in case you need to access any character sheets or anything for this, so totally up to you. But anyway, so last we left, we had gotten to the finale, which was a massive orbital fleet battle between the Orc fleet and what was left of Battlefleet Virgo. You guys had emerged from the warp, one final crazy journey that was not too bad, except that at the end you got spit out by a temporal hole, which sent you guys into a nearby phenomenon, which was an asteroid cluster not too far from the planet of Moriarch. And it was there, you guys took a little bit of damage, but then you ended up getting through that and engaging the fleet. And quite an epic battle ensued as you guys fought the battle fleet and ultimately destroyed and crippled the enemy flagship and forced what was left of the fleet to retreat and make an emergency warp jump to safety. It was a tough fight, though, as there were casualties on both sides. You guys had managed to take down, I think it was 4 or 5 of the enemy ships. About half the fleet you managed to incapacitate. However, your flagship, the Vindication, was not only crippled, but outright annihilated during the fight, as on the third turn, it took a direct critical hit from the Nova Cannon on the enemy flagship. And then later in the fight, it took damage from some other ships, which caused a plasma reactor explosion, which finished off the Vindication and probably everybody on board. It remains to be seen if the Orc Wa will keep itself in check, or if it's going to fall apart to infighting. Both Steel Rippa and Scorcha suggested and encouraged Peppa to become the new war boss, but that is a story for another day. Also, we don't know what's going to happen to what's left of the Imperial fleet. 5 ships got away, 4 escorts and one of the light cruisers. Some of the ships got destroyed as they tried to retreat, but there were too many for the Orc fleet to follow, and they have made an emergency jump into the warp. Whether or not they get to safety or able to warn the rest of the Imperium about what's happened here, perhaps we will see another day. But for now, Battlefleet Virgo is incapacitated. Imperial control on the system is fractured, to say the least. And who knows what terrible, terrible things may happen now that Imperial might has been shaken. And that is where we ended Mork's Madboyz. So here we are, ready to dive in and talk. So anything anybody wants to ask or say before we dive into some of our questions here?
I know I choose to believe that Locktar escaped in a death thread. He's currently floating around space waiting to be picked up.
Tyler, just FYI, I did put the invite link for the game into Discord chat if you want to join the game.
Oh, great. I will hop in.
I wasn't sure if you still had it. Yeah, Eric, I told the guys when that happened, I would not normally kill a character when their player's not here. But I also feel like it's one of those situations where the odds of survival and escape were probably pretty slim. But until we come back and perhaps the orcs search the wreckage and confirm whether or not he's dead, who knows? So I think we can leave it a little nebulous with a question mark.
I feel like Mulgrim's the type of orc that has something planned.
That's true. However, it is confirmed, we did roll for it. Zingitz did die in the explosion. He did not escape. So, and I can tell you that Vashir is dead as well. That's something that's been decided. But I didn't decide on Mulgrim, so perhaps maybe we do a roll or something. I don't know, but I think we'll just leave it as who knows sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's one of the few times I would actually have a character get knocked out like that on an exploding starship. That seems fair. Anywho, anything else anybody wants to say, or should we get to this list?
I'm good.
Alrighty. Well, first question I wanted to run past the players. I want to know what everybody's favorite part of the campaign was, whether this was a specific encounter, one of the planets, it's one of the things we did. I tried to make this was a very sandbox campaign compared to a lot of the stuff that I've run in the past. So this was some new ground for me as well. And I had a lot of stuff written before we started so that my prep time each week would be, minimal. So I'm interested to see what everybody enjoyed the most out of this. So just feel free to start chatting. It's a conversation.
Well, my favorite moment was when Locktower and Peppa jumped that stupid Eldar guy and stole all of his shit.
Oh yeah, that was right at the beginning.
Yeah. That set the tone for the rest of the campaign. 2 orcs just mugging some Eldar walking down the street.
Yep, and that sword that came in clutch.
Oh yeah, hence boss killer.
Yeah. Helped us take over the ship, I think, a little bit.
It was a good example of one of the only characters in the game whose defense was high enough to actually matter. Like,
oh yeah, it was like 6.
Yeah, it was like 6 or 7. Nothing's really been quite that high since then. So,
yeah, we almost died too. We didn't have any weapons.
Oh, that's but that's thought it was cool though. You guys actually did manage to take him down anyway. So I felt it was appropriate. You guys were able to loot his shit, because you definitely earned it in that one. So
yeah.
I mean, it was fresh, but the Dreadnought battle was fucking hilarious because I don't think we had a clear strategy. It's like
clearly not.
Yeah, it shot for 8 turns.
Yeah, I think 2 of us kept advancing. One kept trying to fuck with Peck, and then another. Like it was a rotating ballet of somebody being down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Hilarious.
I'm really curious I want to ask Matt this, why he kept fucking with the cameras when the only camera in that room with the turret you guys had destroyed. So I wasn't sure what he was trying to accomplish there once the Dreadnought got into that room. Like, I understood he did with the first time he did it, when you guys heard the Dreadnought stomping around, like that made sense. But then to spend the next like 3 or 4 turns doing it, like, I just assumed, as with everything in this game, if Peppa and or Steel Rippa would have gotten a chance to shoot, the fight probably would have started to end really quickly. And as soon as he started to shoot, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, that was fucking great.
So if anybody would have died, that definitely would have been his fault.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was the closest we ever came to death, I think.
That was,
Yeah.
I think.
But like a whole party.
I've never felt closer to death.
Yeah.
And that's
it's fighting as a Death Watch veteran or venerable Dreadnought, I guess. At least the threat was real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the assault cannon wasn't too scary, and then he got into melee, and it's like, oh, he did 27 damage AP4.
Yeah, the assault cannon was really underwhelming, wasn't it?
Yeah.
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 I don't even think it had
I
much
was in
AP
mega
on it.
armor, but it's an assault cannon. Like, it's supposed to have like a.
Well, that because at least in the past in the tabletop, the assault cannon has always been the go-to weapon. Like if you have a unit that can take an assault cannon, that's usually the chosen option.
Yeah.
Especially back when it had the rending rule. So, yeah, not a great translation here. The heavy bolter definitely felt more dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that
Sure.
that brutal and the rapid fire combination just did so good.
Tyler, Eric, how about you guys? Favorite moment, favorite part?
I really liked when we were like going around uniting the clans and kind of got to do something different for each one.
Oh,
like
fuck
the
yeah.
like the race that we did.
Oh yeah, dude.
That was really
the race
cool.
was pretty good.
I
The-
definitely feel like we got to do more as orcs than I would have assumed, like with like negotiations and different kind of like, I don't know, we had a lot of opportunities for role play that were different.
Yeah, I was concerned when we started this that this was going to devolve into just shoot everything.
Murder
But
hobos.
I was pleasantly surprised the amount of roleplay we had, and I'm really happy that it worked out the way it did. So I have to commend you all, especially Kyle gets the gold star for his voice. I think Grave Scorch's voice was the best orc voice, and then it's a tie between Sean and Matt for the second one. I really enjoyed everybody really sticking to that, so that was cool.
I would say the exact same thing. That was my favorite. That was reuniting the clans. The racing was great. There were a lot of great fights where you just kind of like, I don't know. I feel like there wasn't a huge plan. Like when you were fighting the big knobs, or there was two knobs, and Lokhtar was, just kind of. Everyone was like shooting like and sending him hints like, "True, do this, try this, grab his tooth." Like
Yeah.
it was very orky in the sense that it kind of just like you guys stumbled into it, but you kept coming out on top. You kept blundering into these things, but coming out on top, and that was really enjoyable and funny to listen to.
So true.
Yeah,
Fuck yeah.
becoming the war boss was definitely not on my plans going into this campaign.
Well,
But you know what? You fucked him up.
You did great.
There was that moment, and this was another favorite of mine, where you fucking skewered that snake bites guy, Grosnotz. Like you skewered him to the fucking throne. It knocked it back, and then you stood back up and like put the throne back up. It was it's like, oh yeah, of course you're the fucking war boss. Man.
You killed the rogue traitor, like the boss. So I mean, it makes sense, right?
And it looks like the frog has finally joined us. What's up, buddy?
Hey, not too much. How are you all doing?
We
Good,
are
good.
good. We
Question
just
of that.
started through our questions here. What was your favorite part of the campaign, Matt?
I definitely really liked the kind of sneaking around and starting the coup, I think. Like getting the bits together, sneaking around the ship and trying to subvert what's going on with the rogue trader and ambushing their guys. I think that was a lot of fun.
Excellent. All right. How about next question? Who was everybody's favorite NPC and why? This was pretty much unanimous. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No
Can't imagine
spoon
why.
here. It was Zingitz.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe because it was also my favorite character to roleplay. Maybe that's why he was everybody's favorite. But I wanted a Grot from the start. I knew I had to have a good Grot voice, and yeah, I felt like kind of the New Yorker, kind of stuck up, thinks he's better than everybody.
Yeah.
Too big for his own britches kind of characters seemed to work, and yeah, I like that he kind of became your sidekick and not necessarily like a punching bag. I thought that was funny.
Yeah. Like when in doubt, ask Zingitz.
Yeah, he's like it was the like stereotypical sort of like wisecracking smaller guy, like sidekick that was just like, yeah, boss. It was just like it was such a perfect him and Locktar were perfect.
And then Zing gets bullying Grave Scorcher. I enjoyed.
Yeah, there was one point where you Chris, you were telling Kyle something like, "Yeah, that's why you're not the boss. You don't think of things like this," and like you were just going off on him. It was so funny. I just characteristically love characters that are the small little guys that talk shit. They're just so funny.
I mean, let's have one last look at our hero and champion.
King.
True king.
True king.
That's what a king looks like, y'all.
He will be missed, that's for sure.
He'll live on in our hearts.
Maybe Mr. Pibb will take over one day and become the new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once we get
I don't think he died, but special shout out to Spunky the Gator.
Oh yeah, Spunky's still around. He's a new acquire.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spunky the Sump Croc, I think is what the fuck that thing's called. Yeah, Sump Croc. It's actually a unit you can get in Necromunda for the Goliaths.
No, the moment that character art popped up on screen, I was like, "This fuck yeah, that's awesome."
He just looks so cool. That is such great artwork.
I mean,
I like he's got a little fucking bone hanging from his collar, like a little name tag. It's amazing.
It's like this world's version of a pit bull, just ready to go.
He totally is. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Maybe,
that was another.
I'll actually paint those Goliath guys Brian gave me just so I can have a Sup Croc.
Fuck yeah. That was another thing I really dug. That was another kind of specialty thing where we were going around fighting the different gangs.
Yeah.
That was cool. I dug that.
Yeah. Cool way to like introduce them and like build the world.
Yeah, as I said, when I made this campaign, I basically just I made the whole system before we started. That was pretty much my prep. Was I designed a star system, and I sent out a questionnaire to the players, which at the beginning we kind of figured out what your position was on the ship and some of the attributes or attitudes of the ship and the crew towards you guys and things like that. And I used I used the rules from Rogue Trader. I don't know if it's in the core book or one of the expansions, but there's rules to actually generate your own planets and system. And I used that in conjunction with the rules from the Alien RPG to make your own system. And that's how I determined like how many planets there were, the size, the different zones. And then, because I think I've said this multiple times in my other games, like for me, if I'm building my own world or area, for me, I'm such a visual person, I need like to have a map in front of me. That's how I did my very first D&D campaign, and that's how I did Gallows Geist with Gallows End. So having that map really helps me, and then I can be like, okay, well, there's a planet here, and start to fill those in. And then, I classified them all, like with the way the Imperium classifies their planets, and then try to come up with like what would be cool on each planet and some secrets here and there. And, we had the players give me a list of the different types of enemies they wanted to encounter or species they wanted to see. So, all of the stuff that everybody requested was in here. We didn't see it all, but everything that everybody requested was here somewhere in the system to find. And then it was, once we started, I figured it was going to either be you guys were going to take over the ship and become pirates, or you were going to do what the Rogue Trader said and like basically become her trusted guys that she could count on to get shit done. And she was going to be, become a bit more of a radical Rogue Trader using aliens a lot more than maybe she should. And, then there were going to be kind of two branching stories that branch into other parts. So I was kind of prepared for either, but I totally wanted to leave it up to you guys. And when Iron Jaws got domed by the heavy bolter and killed, I knew that was perfect, and I had to let it happen because I knew this is going to force them to make a decision now. Because I didn't want to lead you guys, and I felt that's kind of what was happening at first. I felt like you guys just fell in line with Iron Jaws because maybe you didn't really know what to do or like how to go about things. You're like, well, he wants to fight, so I guess we will. And then when he died, I was like, this is perfect. Okay, question 3. Who was your favorite enemy and why? Whether this was a group or a specific, like, named enemy.
I don't.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't know if this counts, but I said the Swapperoo with the Space Marines was probably my favorite, and
Yeah.
seeing things on their side and coming back around and fighting them.
Were you guys scared after you played as them to fight them? Or
little
worried at
bit.
all?
Yeah, because they went through like as we were playing them, they like just crushed everything they came in contact with.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys domed like probably 30 to 50 orcs in that fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were going ham. And I was totally expecting us to get at least a little fucked in the fight.
Yeah, Kyle, imagine my surprise.
Yeah.
Fucking Chris is
Dude.
telling us like, all right, well, just don't try and power game them, don't blow up all their heads, don't focus fire them, and then here we are just getting fucking wrecked.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like when we played the Space Marines, we were rolling like fucking bosses. And then unfortunately, I think the first 2 rounds, like 2 or 3 of you rolled complications and just like fucked yourselves.
Yeah,
it was
we-
a very good example of like sometimes the dice want to tell a different story, like for sure.
I don't think we had the best strategy going into there either. Certainly I didn't. But I thought my character was a little tougher than he actually was.
Well, that was the other thing. We had strategy. We had people all over.
Yeah,
the
you
place.
guys had a fantastic strategy, I think.
You also got shot by the death pistol, which that kills
Yeah.
everything in this game.
Yeah.
So
That's our big DPS right there.
Oh, is it the pistol from Halo?
yeah. I do
Deathbringer.
appreciate that Matt didn't like spend every turn trying to kill everybody. He was like zooming around on the bike and stuff too. So I don't think I didn't notice that, Matt, because I did.
I was trying to play it cool. It's like,
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah,
but,
the first shot down a character, you're like, maybe we won't do this every round.
And then Eddie flubbed his attack, and he can't like kill one orc, and then Travis flies off by himself. I mean, the problem was that the Space Marines did not communicate or strategize at all. They just like did stuff, and it was like, well, we're dead.
Yeah.
That's how you die.
Yep. So plan ahead, folks. Plan ahead. All right. What? Who else? Favorite enemy?
I really liked the rogue trader and fighting the retinue and like trying to divvy them up and spread them out on the ship so we can have an easier time of acing the rogue trader.
Yeah, you guys are probably a little afraid after fighting the Eldar, thinking, "Oh man, there's like 4 more of these guys."
Yeah. Like, damn, this might be a bit rough for us. But I mean, we didn't have weapons, so whatever.
that was when I was on the other side of a giant laser pistol of doom and get like down in one shot almost. Or no, I did get down. Peppa was there.
Yeah, I liked the rogue trader and the whole bridge crew fight. That was a lot of fun. And also being on the ship with Peppa and going up against the Psyker. Cartren.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
A lot of explosions there.
Well, like she did the whatever that phasing power is, and
Yeah.
that was just like super hilarious watching orcs. Like you just watched 3 other orcs shoot her, and you're gonna shoot her. Yeah, I'm gonna shoot her.
What else
And,
can I
like,
do,
it
man?
doesn't work, and then it doesn't work out, and everybody's just like yelling at it, like, it's just fucking great. It's like maybe mine will work.
Right.
I wish the Rogue Trader had been around longer, because I really enjoyed building her and her crew, finding artwork, and but I knew when I did it that there was a chance they were not going to be around for very long, so it was a little what the hell was that noise? Everybody still here?
I am. Did
I'm
something
still here.
Yeah.
Bots are still here.
says it's recording.
I don't know what happened. That was weird. Okay, whatever. Yeah, I wish they would have been around a little longer. It would have been interesting if you guys had decided to, like, because basically the other like half of the story was if you guys would have basically done everything she wanted and like basically played nice, she would have given you guys more and more freedom to the point where like you would have been like her her go-to crew after her retinue. Like you guys would have kind of been her right hand, and so you kind of still would have been pirates, but like in more of like a legal way, I guess. And basically she was, her and the tech priest were trying to get the Blackstone because the tech priest learned about it. He knew how valuable it was, and he told her, and she basically was like, well, I want it for myself because it's worth money, and I'm not supposed to have it, so I want it. So that would have kind of put her, like I said, a bit more of like a radical, where she probably would have been up against different parts of the Imperium. And then, I basically would have had you guys as players choose like where to go next, and then I would find reasons or part of the story from her perspective why she would go there. And then that's how you guys were going to explore the system. So either way, it was supposed to be like more of a pirate ship, sailing through the stars kind of adventure. And it's just we were going to see it through one of two different kind of perspectives. But I like this more because it puts you guys in charge rather than the rogue trader being in charge.
As a listener, that's interesting to hear because you listen to it and it's really set up for the mutiny, but you do pay attention to that, the fact that she was pretty cool to them and wasn't a complete asshole. So
Yeah.
I was very curious which way you guys were going to take it, but I was figuring you were going to take over the ship.
Yeah, and I knew based on our survey that we did at the beginning, it was kept secret from the players, but one of the questions was like, how have the orcs kind of acclimated to their new life, basically being slaves? And the major answer that most of we got was that for some reason the orcs kind of like just accepted it and actually became really efficient at their job. And so because of that, the rogue trader like didn't have you guys like in chains like she had like the chaos cultist guys, right? I mean, you guys were locked in the one area, but you had free reign to kind of do what you wanted as long as you kept the plasma drive going. And then it was even more interesting that you guys were in charge of all things like the plasma drive, like one of the most important things on the ship. And after being on the ship for so many years, the tribe had kind of turned it into an orky version. So like if an Imperial mechanic went down there or a tech priest, he'd probably be like, I don't know how the fuck this thing is still working and not exploded. But the orcs kept it going. So because of that, because of the combination of answers, one of the things that I was keeping track on the side was based on how you guys had acclimated to your new life on the ship, determined how the crew and the guards reacted to you guys. And because you basically played nice and did what you were told and didn't cause really any trouble, the security was very minimum and the guards didn't really expect trouble from you, even though they should because you're orcs. But again, the Imperium's such a big place that a typical person could go their whole life and maybe not even encounter one of these species like an orc or a tyrannid or something like that. So, some of these guards maybe had never seen an orc before you guys and they didn't know any better. So knowing that the security was light, they weren't always watching you guys, I knew that if you tried to take over the ship, it'd probably be a lot easier than if the security was like really heavy and the guards were like, always making sure, like they probably never would have given you weapons until you were off the ship, and they'd probably launch the weapons in like a separate shuttle, okay, go do this mission. But they let you guys up an arm while you're on the ship and then get on your shuttle. So that was like one of the things that was the point of the survey as well. Okay, next question. Which planet in the system did you enjoy the most and why? And kind of a follow-up, were there any planets that either didn't sound interesting or sounded really interesting that we didn't get to explore? And if there was something that you didn't think was interesting, why? Because I tried to make everything as appealing sounding as possible with something to do if you guys would have explored it.
Yeah, so Chris, I don't know if you told us like before we started the campaign, but and this is a testament to how awesome you did a job of like putting the system together. Like, had you not said that you put it together, I would have just assumed it was like in game or like in universe.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, I thought the planets were awesome. I really dug Telesaurus Bliss. That was probably the most fun.
I put that as
And-
well. That was really
Yeah. And then I wrote down Dunavern mostly because the map pack you picked for that with where the Reavers were and stuff, I just really dug the art design.
Yeah, I was looking forward to that as well.
Yeah. And like I said, the whole like kind of setting up gangs on this planet and then like having to specialize your boys in a fight against each gang was pretty interesting, I thought.
Yeah, I didn't want to go through like 4 sessions of fighting gangs, especially as we were getting towards the end of the campaign. So I wanted to do something just a little bit different. I want to try to incorporate all the troops you had unlocked in a different way, rather than just, oh, here's some red shirts you can take with you that have different skills and weapons.
Yeah, and I think in those situations, we each got a role, so I'd say that it still gives you enough of a sort of hint of an outcome or a chance, and then you can just you can hit up other teams.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not very good with the planet names, but it was the one where we kind of like sneaking around and got like spotted by the spotlights.
That was
Yeah.
Telesaurus Bliss as well.
Was it? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
the
was
Pleasure
right
World?
before,
Yeah.
right before the pad.
We got to steal all the jets and stuff, and
Yeah,
Like,
the
like
race
race
through
through
the
the
city
city.
was
Yeah.
cool. I really enjoyed that. And the fight on the platform was pretty fun, too.
Almost getting aced by a single critical grenade. Very
Yeah.
cool.
That fucking sergeant's my favorite NPC.
you gotta be careful on those grenades.
Yeah. They're deadly.
They're really hit or miss, man. It's like they either wreck or they do absolutely nothing. It's like you just threw a rock at a guy or
Yeah.
fucking nukes the whole party. Sean, how about you, Matt? Favorite planet?
I really liked Telesaurus Bliss. I thought that was cool. I think it was Charcion where we went into the tunnels as well and met the feral orcs and
Yeah.
got ambushed by the dark vision humans.
That was on Thentros. Charcion
Thentros.
was the
Mhm.
Adeptus Mechanicus tunnels.
Right. Okay. So Thentros. But I mean the planet I really wanted to go to was Archimos, the secret Necron hidden tomb world, in a gas giant. Just missed opportunity, I guess. Oh well.
Do you want to know the truth of Archimos?
Oh yeah,
I know
absolutely.
it's been burning. What about everybody else? Should I reveal it?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, let's see.
Yep.
All right. So Archimos is indeed a Necron presence in the
What?
system.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
So
God.
that was one of the things someone had said they wanted to see or fight. I'm actually going to pull my other notes up here. Necrons were on the list. Basically, listeners, I listed like all the major factions and like races in 40K as like, what do you guys want to see when we play? Because I didn't want to, I don't want them fighting Chaos Space Marines all day. If everybody was like, man, I really just want to fight some Tyranids. So that was a big part of that. And I think someone had said Necrons at some point. So actually, hold on, I got my list right here. Yeah, we had Space Marines, Chaos of any flavor. Imperial Guard was the big winners with 3. So I think we got a good chunk of them between the Battle Fleet and the PDF Troopers. And then just regular Guardsmen on Thentros as well. And then we also had Tyranids and Necrons. So the Necrons, the idea is they actually have like a space station that's inside the gas giant. And it's got some crazy technology that keeps it from getting like destroyed or crushed by the gases of the planet and things like that. And the reason people disappear is when they get too close, the base basically awakens and has some sort of like Necron tractor beam that just draws their ships into the planet, the gas giant, never to be seen again. So if you guys had gone there your ship would have gotten sucked into the gas giant and basically brought to the Necron space station, where they would start basically disassembling the ship and trying to board the ship and take it over. And you guys would then have to like fight your way onto the space station and disable the tractor beam so you could escape or try to destroy the base. And they were here since way before in the backstory of the system. So they're like, this used to be a Necron area, and that's all that's left of their empire. And like most, Tomb Worlds, they've gone asleep for far too long and then wake up not really knowing what the hell's going on. So you were right, Sean, the whole time. You were right.
God damn it. Something that was a joke turned out to be right. Feels kind of good.
Yeah, it was good. Glad you picked up on that.
Yeah.
Okay, what else did we have here? Did you enjoy the open-ended sandbox style of the campaign? And how would you compare this to more linear style? Did you guys ever feel lost or not sure how to proceed?
No, I enjoyed the sandboxiness. Never felt lost. I mean, worst case, we always just asked Zingits, and he gave us a good, guidance on what to do next.
Yeah, that's true. I think there's a few times where I kind of felt like, I don't know, paralyzed by choice. Like trying to oh, there's so many planets we could go to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's more pressure just as the war boss trying to figure out how to lead the party and the group.
Yeah, I was really surprised when you kind of were thrust into the role of leadership by the rest of the players.
There are times I I'm the war boss. I should just tell everybody what to do. And it's that's not really a fun game though.
Yeah.
True, but we did sign up for an orc game, so I mean, if it wasn't you, it would have been Ironjawz doing that, right? I mean, to some degree, I still was going to let you guys pick, but yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool, and I thought everybody did a great job, kind of playing into that. I'm sure there were times I could tell you guys were like, where is there a right choice here? I could tell definitely crippled by choice. There's so many things to do. What do we do?
I was trying to figure out a risk reward for the inhabited planets, or it's do we need more stuff before we take on this? Can we jump? Because it made sense at the beginning to kind of go and scavenge from the moons that we had already checked out and the largely abandoned planets, but then it's are we jumping into Telsora's Bliss? And do we have the manpower at this point? And it worked out there, but remember, it was sort of I don't know. Are we just gonna get blown up by their anti-air cannons or something if we approach the hive cities? And
so I'm really curious. You guys seemed dead set on going to Telsora's Bliss. That was on the top of your list for so long. Why did you guys want to go there so bad, and what did you think you were gonna find? As a player, I want to know what was going through your head. Okay, if we go there, we're gonna do this, and it's gonna be awesome.
I was kind of thinking Slaanesh, Chaos or something, a Chaos planet, cultists and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we kept calling it the Pleasure Planet first, and we're oh, it's probably Chaosy, Slaanesh stuff.
Well, just to be clear, that is an official Imperial categorization of a planet, is a pleasure world, and it's a world that's been set up as a paradise. So it's not polluted, it probably has still has an atmosphere, if not a breathable one, and it's just a full world where nobles go and hang out and get to indulge all their whims. Obviously it could be certainly lead down the road of Slaanesh, but I felt that would be too obvious. That's why I didn't make it that. But I'm glad that you were thinking that, because that's kind of like that red herring. Oh, that's the first thing someone's going to think when they hear Pleasure World. There's a Slaanesh cult there. I know it.
Yeah,
I was thinking it was going to be like Las Vegas, just casinos and shit. Just go in, throw some dice.
Yeah, well,
figuratively.
I just figured if it's a bliss, like pleasure world, I immediately thought, oh, so there's gonna be wealthy people there. We're gonna rob the shit out of them or kill them. I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of on that wavelength as well, where it's like there would be less hardware than in an industrial like hive city. They're like making weapons and shit out there. It's like we're not gonna do that one yet. We're gonna go to Telsar's Bliss where there's not as much stuff and try to start a rumble there, and then maybe move
Did
on
you
up.
think that they were just going to be like a punching bag? Like they were just be pushovers because they're just nobles hanging out gambling?
I mean,
Kinda.
it's all relative, but yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I mean the like the bounty versus the effort maybe was the ratio is probably the best that we could have at that point with
Yeah.
Telestor's Bliss. And then like, by the time we finished there, we probably would have gotten a bit more loot, bit more scrap, bit more boys, and then we would have been contenders,
Yeah. I was
Yeah,
not expecting to get clapped like we did.
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't going to be a place where you guys would just been able to walk in and hang out because it's still a human world and they're obviously very anti-Xenos as most Imperials are. But I did want it to seem like the whole thing with all the planets was that if you guys had bothered to do more research on each of the planets, you could have found out some of this stuff, which you did to some degree, I think, with one of the moons. You found out some of the Adeptus Mechanicus secrets. But the idea was that once you guys took over the Vindication, you then basically got the system map and the basically the profiles for each of the planets you could explore. And then if you had done more research on there, you could have gone through the ship's records to find out more specific stuff. Like, oh, yeah, Telesaurus Bliss is a place where rich people hang out and it's all nobility, but because it's all nobility, they've spent really good money to make sure they have a really good planetary defense force because they don't want anybody fucking with their stuff. So, yeah, when you guys showed up, like, oh, we're just gonna go slap some rich people and steal their shit, and it was like, oh god, they've got anti-aircraft and jets and shit, like, and their PDF troopers have jump packs. What is this?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that
Okay.
led to one of the most memorable encounters just the whole time, from the ship getting shot down to storming the gates, stealing the stuff, the race through the city, fighting to the platform, and then fighting on the platform and escaping the planet. Like, it just felt like one big encounter.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was intense. A great time for sure. I
Any-
think my assumption there was like we'd pick up some of that stuff from scanning. It didn't even occur to me that we could like just
Research?
keep digging through the ship's records again. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to hand everything to you on a silver platter, because you guys had done it a little bit when you searched. Like I said, you guys investigated the Adeptus planet and found out some of that stuff. So, any planets that were underwhelming or you wish we had visited other than Arkamos?
No, I think they all had like their interests and stuff, so
Yeah.
I enjoyed them.
Yeah, I don't think there was any that was like, well, that was kind of boring.
Well,
think
that's
they-
good.
We all kind of had their own theme and gave us something different to do.
Well, that's good, because I racked my brain on a couple of those. Like, what do I put here? Like, it's a moon. Like, what do I put on this moon to make it interesting, and not just it's a moon? Like, everything has to have a reason for them to go there and do something or find something. So, cool. All right. Let's see next. What did you guys think about one of the players becoming the war boss? Do you think it worked out well, or do you think it disrupted the game in any way?
No, I loved it. I like the idea of, at least one of us being kind of more in charge of it. I liked the whole sandbox deal. And I do find it hilarious because like this is simultaneously a gift and a curse in this sort of situation where like I really think we all dig playing with each other, so it's like we don't want to step on anybody's toes with like our choices. So when one of us is the war boss, it's like we should go here. Maybe.
I guess cool with it.
Yeah, and I think it's much more engaging to have someone kind of at the wheel in terms of like leading, especially in a battle.
Yeah, a lot of my campaigns that I've run in the past, especially my first D&D game, which I've ran many times, like my own kind of created world, it had a lot of NPCs that kind of ended up like leading or guiding the party, which I think just as a first time player or a game master, DM, that was just something I used to make sure that like the players were kind of participating in my story. So letting the players take the reins can be tricky, especially if you have like a story in mind and they're not picking up on your breadcrumbs. So, but I was happy with the way it turned out because with this being as the open style it was meant to be, I really wanted it felt more natural that like one of you guys was in charge. So it felt even more like you guys were picking where you wanted to go instead of, well, I as Sean want to go here, and okay, the Rogue Trader's going to do that because that's what we decided. We didn't have to we didn't have to bridge it between lore and actual gameplay. It was just it all flowed together. Tyler, I'm curious what you thought about that as more of a listener with someone becoming the war boss.
Yeah, I kind of wasn't expecting it as a listener. And it was very apparent that like it kind of just like it happened, and I couldn't really tell if it was planned or not. But knowing what you know about the lore of orcs, one of them is gonna claw their way to the top, and they kind of have to pick someone. So I figured if you weren't going to join the Rogue Trader, it was either going to be maybe like an NPC, or if you would eventually fight I'm sorry, what was the first leader's name?
Iron Jaws.
Iron Jaws. It was going to be Iron Jaws first. So for a while I thought like, oh, maybe it's going to be Iron Jaws, but then, knowing how you kind of that it was a little bit more open, I kind of figured when Iron Jaws died that, that was maybe not planned necessarily, and you were just going to see what happened. But I as far as I wrote in the survey, I thought it was a very cool idea.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't planned for him to die. I honestly thought what would happen is I thought you guys would, once you decided to follow Iron Jaws, I thought eventually you guys would get too big for your britches, because my idea with Iron Jaws was that if you decided to follow him, he was very much your typical Goth. He was a brutal, straightforward, angry, mean orc, and he was, going to treat you guys like shit. So I thought that eventually you'd get sick of him and be like, we need to fucking kill this guy and take over the tribe for ourselves because he's a dick. That's what I thought was going to happen. But yeah, critical shot to the head with a heavy bolter, man. That's going to put you down. So, R.I.P. Iron Jaws. Big rip, as they say.
It was a wild day.
And then everybody running away after that was very orky. We got to get out of here.
Yeah, that was also funny.
Oh my gosh. That was like completely crazy.
Did you guys like the campaign we did at the start of the survey?
Absolutely.
Sorry, the survey we did at the start of the campaign.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because I'm a total, like, this is my first ever encounter with 40k stuff, so I'm a super new person to the scene, and that was really helpful because it gave me kind of a specific areas to focus on learning.
Okay.
I'm at a bit of a loss. What did you do a survey for things you wanted to do with a campaign?
Yeah, I mean, it's been so long ago. I think I had sent it to you as well, because I know I sent it to a few other people like Brian. But it was like questions like, what's the name of the tribe? What's the name of the ship you're on? What part of the ship do you guys work in? Are there other species on the ship? And if so, like, what are they? And then, like, what did the tribe think their origin story was? Because at this point, the orcs have been on the ship for so long. The first generation that was initially captured by the rogue trader, they're all gone and dead, or they're so old at this point. They, it's like stories, like, oh, we used to live on this planet, or we just always been here. So it's like, how have the orcs acclimated to that since? Because they don't know where they came from, basically.
Okay, cool.
And then I also asked what enemies or what factions do you want to fight or see in the campaign. And it was helpful for me just to have that. Our ship names got pretty much tied, so I rolled randomly for that. I'm sorry, for the tribe name, and then Vindication came out on top with votes. The Plasma Drive Engine Room came out on top. Different species as also as slaves on the ship was in a thing. Boarding torpedoes were popular. So a lot of it was pretty unanimous choices there by the players.
Yeah, I didn't realize kind of during the survey how much boarding torpedoes would shape our campaign and voting for that.
That was good times, man. That's probably the most interesting choice there too. So I think I'm glad you guys picked it. Did we enjoy the starship rules that I had to convert for this nonsense? Do you feel like they worked?
I really liked them. I think everything about them was great. I had one nitpicky thing I mentioned, which is like, the ships have to move a certain amount each turn, which is a great idea to like keep people on their toes doing tactics and things like that. But then it becomes mildly confusing with like when you're ramming or boarding, and it's like, okay, now the ships stop because they're colliding with one another, and other ships sail past that combat, and it's, I guess, just like cognitive, it's a bit of dissonance there.
Yeah, that's ripped straight out of Battlefleet Gothic. You just can't.
Yeah.
You can try to slow down, but the idea is that the momentum and inertia in space keeps you going unless you actively try to stop.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think having people move around is a great idea. I don't know if it would make more sense to like, if you do a ramming with another ship, you like those two ships together while they're entangled drift in one way or another or something. I think that would be appropriate thematically, but it doesn't really matter. I think mechanically, it's just something that I felt was weird from a nerd and like a physics and space perspective.
Did you guys think the starship rules were too complex or too simple, or were they about where you think they should be?
I think they were pretty good where they should be. I kind of expected more interactions. Like, I really liked the possessed fight we did. I think like just like Search and Crew just went possessed and we had to like fight them down. So I think I expected more like opportunities to like demons or something getting on board and having to like fight off intruders.
Okay. Well, listeners, if you haven't seen them already, I am going to be releasing the starship rules that I wrote along with the warp travel rules, because I know there are tons of people in the Wrath and Glory community that want to add starships to their game, and Cubicle 7 has yet to do so. So, you can check out the Wrath and Glory Facebook page, and I'll see if I can put them somewhere on the Discord channel, and probably on our Facebook page somewhere. But if you want, check them out. They will be completely free and available for people to check out and use. They're by no means perfect, but we have tested them at this point where they are functional. And, I just converted mostly everything I could from Rogue Trader. So if you read through the document, you can see some of the design choices I made, and I kind of explain how I got to certain numbers, which was the big thing, converting numbers over, and what should a DN be versus a percentage bonus and things like that from the Rogue Trader system. So I think it works. I think it'll make do until we do get real rules for starships, and you're free to tweak them and tear them apart or use what you like and don't, throw out the rest. So hopefully just one more gaming group gets a use out of that, then it's worth all the extra effort, because that took a lot of time to do. So, but Happy to do it. First time I've ever really done anything like that too. So, but I felt it was necessary if we wanted to have cool starship battles, which felt important since you guys got your hands on a starship almost right away.
I thought they were really cool, having played in it once. But you guys, I think I'm coming up in the audio. You guys have another couple battles, right, where you use them?
Yeah, the first one is where they first encounter some Imperial ships and they get into their first fight. I think we had like 3 or 4 starship fights over the course of the campaign. So I knew there's probably gonna be more. Then as the campaign went on and on, I knew that's where it was gonna end, was with the big star fight.
Yeah. I mean, jumping into it, it was a little bit much to wrap my head around, like all the special things you could do. The basics of it, I think, were pretty easy to understand, but I think, man, you should friggin' write the source book at this point. Should be like, Cubo 7, look.
I've done the work for you.
I've done the art, just slap it in, and it was a lot of fun. I've always wanted to play Battlefield Gothic, but I felt like it was probably kind of, I don't know, I always thought it was really complex. So that kept me from getting into it. So it was nice to be able to play a version of it.
Well, there's rumors there might be a new BFG coming one day, which, considering they've redone Blood Bowl and Battlefield Gothic and Titanicus, I can only hope, because BFG was an awesome game. So, one day. What else we got to talk about tonight? Did you guys enjoy the rules for adding stuff to the tribe, unlocking like units and things like that? He keeps dropping in and out. I'm not sure what's going on here.
Oh, he says his internet's kind of bugging out.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, but I thought it was cool to kind of like, having tank buses would be really cool, and finding out ways to like incorporate some of the other units that maybe we wouldn't normally start with, being slaves, and kind of finding that equipment, building that equipment as we kind of like come into our own as a horde.
Yeah. Making guys with the new scrap seemed like a great progression, and seeing them pop up in maps and like the takeover of the gangsters fights, that was all great. I think with the like actual growth of members of the tribe and the big number that we had, I feel like what I wanted to see was like them funnel into the boots of all the starships that needed crew, and be like, we got like 9,000 orcs sitting around. Can we get a couple of them to pilot a ship? But I know that's all like different matters of scale, and
yeah,
it's coming in from wherever. But
having seen it all now, like part of it was I just wanted you guys to feel like your orc tribe was growing, and I think towards the end of the campaign it was starting to pick up, but still, like, I probably could have even doubled the rate that you guys accumulated, because I think you don't even have enough to fill one ship, which is crazy to think, because you have 8 ships now or whatever. So
yeah, that's madness.
It probably should have been going more into like the 10,000s versus just the 1,000s of orcs. Eventually like maybe surpassing the 100,000 or million mark. But I thought it was cool just to as a little thing. I did actually have rules where the tribe growth did affect the population, but I think it just got lost with all the other shit we had to keep track of, to be totally honest. And it was just one of those things. Probably just need to be simplified and cut down. But again, I just cut it straight out of Rogue Trader, so be it. Did you guys enjoy some of the non-conventional things that we did? Like the Death Watch switcheroo, or having the guests on, things like that.
Oh yeah, all of that stuff was great. I think those were definitely all highlights of the campaign.
Definitely
Yeah.
makes me want to play a Death Watch campaign now, and just run around as a space
Oh, yeah.
marine.
Hell yeah, I agree. I mean, sometimes, like, if I'm gonna play a game where I'm the super powerful, power gaming, over the top character, it would probably be a Space Marine campaign. Like, if that's where I want to be the big heroic like character, I think that would be the most fun. Who knows? Maybe we'll see. big question, probably the most important question here. Did you guys feel like you were orcs, and did you enjoy that experience?
Oh yeah, I think the whole sandbox feel really helped like tie into the whole orky feel of it. And it was fun playing. I mean, I played Scorcha as just like a one track minded orc who just like wants to burn shit. So yeah, it was fucking hilarious.
You know, I did enjoy that Scorcha kind of became like Locktar's right hand and like his enforcer. And like I felt that whether it was intentional or not, Scorcha felt really loyal to Locktar, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I think because when we first met everybody and Iron Jaws was starting to like stir up shit, I remember I think we all rolled, right, to see if we were gonna like kind of pick up what Iron Jaws was putting down, and I think I rolled really high, so I was like, oh, she's just everything, he's the war boss. And then Locktar fucking skewered that guy, and eventually the roll went to him, and I was like, oh man, well, he's the war boss, he's the greatest thing ever. So it was just like Scorch's deal is like whoever the guy is, he's gonna be right next to that guy.
It's not a, he's smarter than he looks sort of thing, right? Like he's really planning and scheming the whole time, and he acts like he's not that smart, but he actually was the smartest character, I think, like with his stats. I think he had the highest intellect.
Oh shit, really?
I think so, yeah. Which that's what it was funny, because you were always playing him as like he's kind of like this, not exactly the brightest guy, but I think you actually had the highest intellect in the group.
That's pretty
Yeah,
funny.
because I think we kept having you like roll those scores, roll those tests.
Oh yeah, there were a couple times I remember doing that. You're like,
Like, no, I can't do that.
I was like, I don't know, guys, I'm really low. And then I remember Sean just going like, that's not low.
Well, kind of piggyback off of that, do you feel this was a successful non-imperial perspective for a campaign?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it gave us a chance to kind of, like you said, kind of like see a lot of what 40K has to offer as far as the different factions, and kind of see how each one plays out, and gave us a chance to kind of like just go wild and kind of do whatever. The having the open sandbox kind of gave us, although like I said, in some points I felt like kind of like stuck, it definitely gave us a chance to kind of like be orcs and we just want to go here because we want to go here.
Yeah,
Like, we just
blunder
want
into
to trap.
a big fight.
We just want to fight. Like,
Well, I think it was successful, and I hope listeners or other people in the community, you can take this as some inspiration or a good example. I think that even though Wrath and Glory is meant to be, play whatever you want in 40K, or maybe a combination of all the old Fantasy Flight games, there's not enough. I don't think there's enough material there from the publishing side to really experience it. So you have to rely on like Abundance of Apocrypha, stuff that the community has made. But I hope that this inspires people to check it out and see that even if it's not this campaign or this game, any RPG, like you put a little bit of elbow grease in, it's very easy to reskin stuff or push it into a different area that maybe the game wasn't meant to do. So if you want to play an Eldar campaign, or maybe Genestealer Cultists, or Death Watch, or a Chaos Cult, like the groundwork is there. You just gotta kind of figure it out and check it out, because it doesn't always have to be, oh, you're agents of a rogue trader or an inquisitor. So I think it was successful. I enjoyed it. This is definitely the most fun I've had GMing a game, just because it was so off the wall, and I tried very hard to just let you guys do what you wanted and try to react and be ready for whatever you guys could throw at me. So I felt it was good training for me as well, good practice, and I enjoyed where it went, man. All the crazy shit you guys did was fun. Which leads to my next question. Would any of you consider returning either to this story or to this star system and see what else is going on or what happens after the orcs have fought the battle fleet?
I absolutely do. Yeah, I mean, like, especially the idea of if we were playing another faction or someone else and got to run into the Madboyz as like enemies.
Oh yeah, like
That
the
would be fucking
Death
cool.
Watch trying to like come in and cleanse the system.
They could be the
Yeah.
final boss, your
Fuck yeah.
characters.
That would be
Oh
well.
yeah, everybody takes a planet.
Tyler, as a listener, would you be interested to see this system or this story from another perspective, or to see the story continue with these same characters?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the strength I think of it, and you can see that the guys had a lot of fun playing as the orc characters, is letting go of the inhibitions that you have, I think, when playing a role-playing game. And, just the orcs represent something very primal within us that, comes out, and you can splurge and act on your impulses without a lot of regard. And I don't think a lot of people get to play games like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, and it's very it's in game, it's in story for 40K for orcs to do this kind of wacky shit. Like they're meant to be like ferocious, scary aliens, but they're also the comic relief. And some people think that they have the perspective like orcs are the only people in 40K that actually enjoy their lives because they get to do what they want, whereas everybody else is fucking miserable, Like,
Yeah.
Orcs love the fact that they're always fighting. Like, that's what they're there to do. For everybody else, it's fucking terrifying and awful. Like, oh, my planet's constantly at war. I'm thrown into a meat grinder for the Imperial Guard. But for the orcs, it's just another day. They love it. Do you guys feel the campaign had a good mix of everything as far as types of encounters, adventures, enemies, the different factions you guys wanted to see?
I think so. I did like that we were pretty much strictly orc only when it came to like ground skirmishes on our side. And like we had, when we did the coup, we had a bunch of people, like a bunch of different factions doing a bunch of different shit. But I really liked encountering different enemies and having to kind of figure out what their weaknesses were and all that. Like I can't believe how dumbfounded we were by the dark vision humans for so long.
The dudes with spears and bows were one of the most challenging fights. It's like, how do we deal with this? We don't have lights. How about the length of the campaign? Everybody feel that it was a good length, and the scope of the adventure, did it feel satisfying, or I guess just did it feel right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I never got to the point where I felt like it was dragging on, I guess. Like every session you came in, like kind of excited to like be in work and see what was happening next.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Each session was like its own thing, and definitely felt fresh.
Yeah, I was a little worried that maybe this would become like, oh, we're orcs, we're fighting shit.
Yeah.
Great,
I think that's
orc
kind of
smash.
like, and I think that's what I was a little concerned about coming in as orcs, is just like how much opportunity would there be to do those different things, and I definitely think that we did a lot more than I would have imagined orcs would get to.
I agree, especially with the role-playing aspect. I was curious. I was cautiously optimistic, and you guys crushed it.
Yeah, I think we had a great balance of that. I felt the same. As always interesting to jump back in. I was definitely worried that we would just sort of like keep escalating, and then eventually the end of campaign would just be like, okay, it's Exterminatus time. They're coming in. Rocks fall. Everybody dies. And I think this is a great way to kind of like lower the curtain on it and be like, they've got it. They're gonna continue on exploding stuff. But we're not just gonna dump a like impossible Doom fleet on them just to like wrap it up.
No, that's like season 2 or 3 if the
Yeah.
orcs survive. Once they have like a proper WoW with like hundreds of thousands or millions of orcs, you know. Because yeah, it's the Imperium. It's like, it's a couple orcs, right? We'll fucking deal with it. Like, oh, we got beat. Like, well, send in more dudes. Like, oh shit, they got beat too. Well, now we need to send in like real guys, you know. So, how did you guys feel about the overall challenge of the encounters? Do you feel that any fights were either too easy or too hard? You know, this is a game that felt really hard to balance, despite actually having rules for how to make enemies to some regard, at least a little more so than I think for Warhammer. And it's got a good variety of like, if you have this, you know, if you have this enemy from the book, if you put it up against tier 1 characters, it's like really hardcore. But if you put it up against tier 3 characters, it's a joke. So I'm curious as players what you guys thought, seeing things from your lens.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I felt like it was pretty well balanced, and whether or not a fight was difficult is whether or not we just started throwing bricks on the dice at the beginning of a fight. It's just like, oh god, I can't pass the tech test to save my life. We're all gonna get squished by the dreadnought. That's also partially a tactical error on my part, but still.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
we had
they're
a
up to
couple.
fight.
You know that.
I think we had a couple really tough fights. I think there was very few times where I felt like the party itself was in trouble. Maybe individuals, but I don't know. I think it was a pretty good mix of fights.
I think that's fair, and I think as a GM, that's probably the way that I see it. Is like, other than the Dreadnought, and before the Space Marines started rolling their dice, I was like, this is going to be rough, right? But otherwise, I never really thought like, oh, the party's in danger, you know. Which again, I found this game was hard to balance for. I think part of it is that it always seemed like either something would hit you and like take you down in 1 or 2 hits, or it would hit you and do no damage whatsoever. There didn't really feel like there was a middle ground in this game. It was always one extreme.
Yeah, but I think like you did a good job kind of setting the tone for specific battles as well. Like the orc bike race with the speed freaks, like that was fun as shit, and that felt fun as shit because like the whole atmosphere around it was very like lighthearted almost. But then then we started getting into more and more hairier shit, and I think it progressed as well as it could have, balanced with like how we were progressing as well.
Yeah, I felt the progression was pretty good, doing the 5 XP a session. I wanted you guys to end at around 300. So like I wanted you guys to basically like, as this campaign ended, that would kind of be your time to go to tier tier 3. So, you know, I think we finished with what, 360 XP, so a little bit more than maybe I would have expected, but you know, I'm still happy with that. It felt like you guys were always getting a chance to improve your characters, but it wasn't like, from a GM perspective, it never felt like you guys gaining experience or new abilities or skills made you like super powerful. You guys always felt powerful to me from the beginning of the campaign, because I think that's just the system with the weapons. But I did feel like your characters evolved and like got new interesting abilities. Like, you know, towards the end of the campaign, Loktar was better at being a leader. You know, Scorcha was a better, you know, kind of tankier character. You know, so that kind of stuff felt interesting, especially with the talents too. Like, oh, I've got Die Hard, so I'm not a pansy when I'm in a fight. Like stuff like that felt pretty cool. And he's gone.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, sorry, folks. Sean is having a whole lot of internet issues right now. It keeps dropping in and out, but we will press on here. Well, that is really all the questions I have here. We're going to dive into our review to finish this off. But before I do, are there any questions from the players that you guys want to know about behind the curtain, or something we didn't experience, or maybe like what was going on behind the scenes for something, or reasoning, anything like that that's really picking at your brain or burning a hole in your head?
Definitely felt like there was a few times like Chris is trying to kill us here. Like he's done with this campaign.
Oh no.
Like,
When?
like we're all gonna die tonight, and like we rolled some critical something and like made it out.
When? Because I need to know that, like, so I can explain what happened.
I don't know. There might have been a few times where like we're all gonna die here, and just like somehow we turned it around. It's probably a lot of the spaceship battles, because some of those boarding actions just like really turn the tide very quickly.
Yeah, so I definitely can't say that I was trying to kill you guys in those, because those are all just rules that I've written and have not really been tested other than in this campaign. So I had no idea how any of that shit was going to work out. The only thing I knew for sure was that at the end battle, the flagship was going to be a full-on cruiser. And after seeing how swingy things were, I think the Imperial fleet had 10 ships and you guys had 8. So once you guys had finished your final fleet, and basically, instead of making you make a ton of rolls, I more or less just decided your fleet was basically at full capacity by the time they got to that fight, other than the weapon systems that had been destroyed, because you guys failed at the Space Marine base where you could have at least fixed one of those items. So, but other than that, I was like, you guys have some pretty big ships, especially the Rex Machina, and a lot of the Imperial fleet was escorts. But I wanted the flagship to be a cruiser, because again, it's supposed to be the big bad guy. And second, like, that's supposed to be the prize. If you guys pull this off, then technically, theoretically, you'll be able to loot this ship and add it to the fleet, and that'll be a proper flagship. And second, I knew it was going to have a Nova Cannon. I think Nova Cannons are really cool. They're fun weapons to use in Battlefleet Gothic because they're guess weapons, which, being an Empire player, I love. And I was like, it's a Nova Cannon. If it gets a direct hit, it should fuck up a ship. If it gets a critical, it should really fuck up a ship. Maybe it fucked it up a little too much, but it was a critical. So again, it was, that's not something I planned to happen. That happened. But it was always going to shoot at the flagship because, they knew which ship was in charge at this point. So they wanted to end the threat. And Sean basically ignored the hails from the Imperial fleet, where you guys would have gotten a chance to meet the Admiral before the fight started, but he just didn't answer the phone until halfway through the battle, and then they talked shit to each other for a little bit. So, yeah, any of the ship stuff was as best as I could prepare based on the knowledge I had. The only one that was like I tried to make feel tougher was the last fight. The other ones I was like, on paper this seems like it's balanced. We'll see what happens. So, any other burning questions? Tyler, I don't know if you have any, being a player. I don't want to spoil anything too much for you.
Yeah, I really haven't listened enough to have any bigger questions. Like I did mention earlier, I was interested to hear you talk about the one of two ways it could have went for them in the beginning, working with her against the rogue trader. Because I kind of thought they were going to potentially team up with them or stay in that fashion that they were working as like her mercenaries.
Yeah, it goes a step further too. There were like 3 or 4 main enemies that you guys were going to end up fighting based on the choices you made. And that was going to kind of, I think, also determine the main thread of the game and kind of the primary story. And as it evolved, and once you guys started collecting ships, I felt the Imperial battle fleet was going to have to be the big bad guy. And that was going to be the people you'd encountered and fought the most, so it made sense they would be the ones that you'd have to deal with to kind of claim victory. So the other ones I'm going to keep secret for now, just because if we come back, obviously we've revealed the Necron, so the Necron one could have been a big one if you guys had gotten there and escaped after like activating them. That would have kind of awakened them to the point where like the whole space station would have awoken, and maybe there'd be like a Necron threat you'd have to fight and kind of become the main threat to the system. But there were like 2 or 3 others that were kind of in the background, which I won't reveal in case we ever come back to this, because we might see things from that perspective. But maybe part of it was because I didn't lay down good enough clues, or maybe you guys just weren't interested and didn't care. I can tell you one of them is because we never went to one of the planets. But
well, that was going to be maybe my next question. Is like, did you have a plan for Heratrax, or was that something? Because I feel
did.
like, okay, I feel like at the beginning we were sort of like trying to pick out planets and figure out what the logical path would be, and it's like, yeah, this one's just on fire. It's a lava planet. You go there, everybody dies.
No, every planet had something to discover and an enemy or like something worth going down there for. I won't reveal what's on Heratrax or what the bigger picture is, but what I will say is there is a clue in the very first episode, which perhaps my description didn't give it away, but I wasn't trying to give it away either. I was trying to leave it a little nebulous and maybe have it get revealed later. So I'll leave that up to you listeners to see what it might be, and maybe one day we'll come back to that. So
A mystery.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was
Tyler.
going to say, I got a question for the players. In the beginning of the campaign versus the end of the campaign, your conception of your character, where did you start at and how did it end up? Like, what changed in your character progression of an orc, or what did you find out by playing your character, or how did they like evolve from their initial conception?
That's a damn good question.
Because I feel like, making an orc character, or at least the way I would approach it, would be probably pretty base. Be like, not saying I didn't like Kyle's character, is actually my favorite character, but it's like, yeah, my guy's got a flamethrower. That's his character. Like, which is perfectly valid for an orc.
Yes, I put all my points into strength and melee, or gun, right? And strength and gun, or toughness and gun. Like, yep, I'm good.
Yep.
I mean, I can say I definitely didn't expect to turn into a war boss. Like, as picking out my character as an orc commando, I was like, okay, like, I could kind of like stay in the shadows and do the scouting stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm not typically like a front and center kind of person to begin with. So then to kind of just be thrust into this, like, okay, you're the war boss, make all the decisions and lead.
Dude, that's what I thought was so great about it. It was like, it clearly, like, Loktar is the dude hanging out in the shadows, right? As he would be if he's a commando or a blood axe. And you don't really hear about blood axe commandos too much in the lore, right? It's usually goths, or speed freaks in particular. So that was interesting. And then, yeah, like, Eric, you're more chill dude, right? Like, you're definitely not seeking out the limelight. So I thought it was really cool that of all the characters, it was like, oh yeah, you can be the war boss, and I could just see your face, like me? What?
Wait a minute.
like Rogue, you can be our spokesperson. Like, what?
This is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
But it turned out like blood axes are actually pretty good at that sort of stuff. Like, it's getting all these bonuses to leadership for some reason.
Yeah.
As a blood axe. So like it ended up working out.
I can totally tell you, if I ever did a 40k orc army, it would be a blood axe army, for sure.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to answer that question to Tyler?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely started with the one-track mind because, I was pretty new to orcs, and as soon as I heard that, all of their tenets pretty much are just like, they like to fight. They're the only ones having a good time. They never lose. They just go away until they can come back and win. So the idea of being a Burnaboy was like, okay, so he's just obsessed with fire. That's great. And then Chris threw me an excellent bone with the bird servitor. So I liked that little arc for a while. It gave him a little bit of things to do with a bird.
Oh yeah, poor birdie.
Yeah, and then and then yeah, I think I played him pretty like curt and gruff at the beginning, and then the more I got comfortable around like Peppa and Lokhtar and realized we were part of the boys and he was the war boss, I think I gave him a little bit more confidence to like shit talk back, except thing that's always kind of got his goat anyway. But yeah, no, it was an interesting little journey, but I mean it was always, he was just always going back to burning shit, so
Yeah.
Kyle, we're getting some weird background noise while you're talking. I think it might be your fan. Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was gonna say I have kind of a funny relationship with character and arcs in this game, since I sort of did change tack halfway through with the Death of Poor Head Haka. But that, I think, was definitely super interesting. I was poring over what to like come in as after that happened, and was briefly considering like a runt herder, having like, since they sort of have a bunch of support stuff and like some core leadership abilities, and I felt sort of scarred from the like Death of Iron Jaws causing everybody to flee, and like the entire plan of taking over the ship and getting all the cool loot from the rogue trader, like that falling apart was extremely traumatic. I was like, what if we did this? Then I was like, well, what if this new guy comes in and starts muscling in on Lokhtar's territory? I don't know if that's gonna be a great dynamic. So I sort of was like, what if I just did Head Haka but with a mustache? And like definitely wanted to make him distinct, but I'm by Head Haka with a mustache, I mean still roll like a tech guy, since I think that was a good niche to fill. And made him distinct by giving him like a leather jacket and a cool motorcycle. Be like, all right, we're about riding stuff and going fast. That's our character development.
If this had been any other campaign, I probably would have not let you pick a mech boy again. But like this being the orc campaign and just do whatever, I wanted to try to stick with that tenet as much as I could, and I felt letting you play a mech boy again, that's clearly what you wanted to play, so I wanted you to, feel like you were getting to play what you wanted, because I've been in situations where I've ended up with characters I've hated or didn't enjoy, and the GM hasn't let me switch my character, or I've like basically had to like let my character die just so I could write up a new character, which is a fucking shitty feeling. So and it worked out fine. Like I never for once viewed Steel Rippa as the same character, even though they were mech boys. Like they do feel like two distinct characters to me. So
Right.
I think you did good with that.
Yeah, I'd
Well,
agree. I never felt like it was the same.
oh yeah, no, it was very separate for me too.
I'm happy to hear that. I thought about it a good bit, at least.
All right. Well, unless there are any other burning questions, we can get to our review portion here, which shouldn't take too long. So, once again, like we did with our Warhammer game listeners, we just have basically 3 questions here, as far as a scale of 1 through 5 of talking about the mechanics and like how noob friendly this game is and things like that, and whether or not we can recommend it or if we think it was worth the time and effort. So the first question, dealing with the mechanics of the game, how much did you enjoy the mechanics of the system? Did you feel like they were fun? Do they feel like they capture the 40K universe? And do they reinforce the themes of the game or make sense in terms of what you need to roll or to do to accomplish a certain task? With a 1 being I hated it, worst game, I never want to play it again, and a 5 being, I love it and I would play this system over all others. Myself, Kyle, Sean, Eric, all kind of set around a 3. This is an average system. We like things about it, but there's things we didn't like about it. So it's not terrible. It's not bad. I'd play it again. It may not be my first choice, but I don't think it's awful. And then we've got Matt and Eric dropping down 4s here. So not the best system, but I prefer this over many other systems. It was very enjoyable. So if you guys just want to talk a little bit about that, what you liked about the mechanics, and things in that nature. So Tyler didn't give scores on here since he didn't really play in the game. But Tyler, I know you said you like meta currencies, as I do, so this is definitely a game that has that, I think, in plenty of abundance. So yeah, it gets an A for me in meta currencies. So yeah, if you guys just want to talk about those scores really quick, mechanics of the game.
Can you guys hear me? Am I coming through? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Great. So while I'm still here, the mechanics seem fun, but like the combat, I think, just could swing too wildly. Like the heavy bolter is just, it shouldn't be as strong as it is for some reason.
Well, see, I think that's the problem with 40k is most of these weapons that you can get your hands on are very capable of killing a single person in one hit, right?
Yeah.
Like a power sword, a heavy bolter, like when you read the descriptions of what those weapons do, it makes sense. But on the flip side, like, how fun is it, like this kind of goes back to when we played Wrath and Glory the first time, right? Before Guardsman Gary became like a veteran trooper with psychic powers, the fucking lasgun is vendor trash, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't even damage like basic enemies with it. And then it's like, well, what do I do when we fight like something like insane?
A space marine, yeah.
I have to take a flamethrower or a plasma gun, right? Like that's my only alternative. And then you've got like, well, I'm playing a space marine, so I start with a bolter, which can, be reasonably effective throughout most of the game at any point. So that makes sense from a lore perspective, but yeah, does it make sense from a fun mechanics perspective? I don't know if I have the answer to that.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved rolling like 10 dice and doing 30 damage. It was great. But like it just threw the balance wildly out of sync.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, at one point, does it feel like it trivializes things too?
Yeah.
Or like, well, and that's part of the part with balancing. It's like, well, they have a heavy bolter, so I'll throw a heavy bolter at them, but that could like take someone down in one hit, theoretically.
Right. Yeah. So, other mechanics, I liked the 4-5 and then 6's doubles. I think that was cool, but Glory just never was reliable enough.
Other thoughts on mechanics?
Yeah, I liked it. I definitely get where you guys are coming from, but I feel like the swinginess is something that's intentional with the system, is especially with like the crit die, that is, I think, makes it very exciting of having like this 1 in 6 to like have a terrible failure or to really pop off. And in like a lot of other systems, they would probably like want to tamp that down if it wasn't going to be crazy. And I think for the Orc campaign, that made it a very good fit. I could definitely see like if you're doing sort of a long-term, more traditional thing, you don't want to introduce that. And yeah, it must be a huge pain in the neck for Chris to try to deal with the balancing, which would be impossible with the crazy swinginess. But I think you really walked that line, and I had a great time, so that's why I gave it a pretty good score. I was like, I had a good time. I don't really have a lot of other metrics to rate things on other than just being like a big nerd and knowing what all the rules for Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and from our the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game. So like kind of rating it alongside those systems, like intentionally swingy, but everything holds together and it's got, all the bits that you'd want from a
Yeah, that's fair.
role-playing
I
game.
mean, maybe that's why it's harder for an actual PC to die. Maybe they took that into consideration. You know, like, oh well, you can get one shot by a heavy bolter, but your odds of dying from a heavy bolter are low.
Yeah,
you know?
you'll be
So
down easily, but
Yeah.
that has to happen a number of times before that's a character.
I will add on though, I like the way criticals work in this game. I liked it in the first edition. I like they kept it this way. I kind of miss the card deck, but I can see why they got rid of it. It still feels like the card deck is there. It's just dice rolls now, which is fine. The criticals feel more or less the same like they did in the first game. And I like you can spend your glory and ruin to make them more brutal, which is cool. But complications outside of combat, I fucking hate. As a GM, I hated the fact that you guys could get a complication on any roll. And I know the game has the table you can roll on to give us like an example, but trying to shoehorn that into some situations, it just doesn't work all the time. And as the GM, having to come up with that stuff, like, you know, the book suggests the players should help with that, which I try to lean into at some points, but I just feel like it's another thing you have to try to come up with on the fly. And as a GM, you're already doing that a lot, and then having to worry like, oh, this was a critical failure. Like in combat, it's fine because the chart is there and it's easy, but especially when it's like a social thing, like I got a complication on an insight check or an awareness check, like I struggle with that as a GM, so I hated the fact that that was a part of this game. That was the one thing I could do without, for sure. Second question, noob friendliness. As a player, how easy or difficult was the game to understand and play, considering everything from the combat rules to character creation and character advancement? 1 being this is baby's first RPG. It's incredibly simple to understand and play, and I could do this in my sleep. Up to a 5, you need a master's degree to play this game. It's incredibly complex in depth and deep. It's not easy to understand and requires constant reminders of how to play, or I never felt like I knew what I was doing. So we had a very interesting spread here. Myself and Eric gave this a 3. Average. Game's got some complexities, but isn't too hard to wrap your head around. Rules clarifications needed on the regular but acceptable basis. And then we had Matt and Kyle gave this a 4. Steep learning curve, a lot of work to play, lots to understand and grasp. Often found myself reaching for the rule book. I agree with that last part for sure. But then the interesting one here, Sean gave this a 1. Baby's first RPG. I'm really interested to hear why you think that.
Did I give it a 1? I thought I gave it
You
like
did.
a 2. Okay.
You gave it a 1.
Well, like there are rules, like stuff like the combat actions, but generally it is just pretty simple. Oh, was that me dropping out again?
Nope, that was Eric. He's back.
Okay. But it seems like simple. It's like, okay, a lot of the combat actions are I get an extra dice, but I can't do anything the next turn. And then all of the crazy weapon rules generally will just give you like brutal or an extra dice here or there. So, and like the stats aren't insane, like you're not doing something like in Shadowrun where you're, you know, building 7 different numbers and then throwing 75 dice at it, and then you gotta count which ones are 2s and throw those out. So, you know, and like the movement is like, it just gives you, every box is 1. So you have 6 movement. As opposed to like the previous edition where it was like, all right, everything's in meters, but the boxes are 5 feet. So now you have to gauge what meters to feet boxes for some reason. So
I will say, while we're on that, I think Cubicle 7 does deserve a gold star for taking this on from Ulysses and continuing with their system, but fixing it for the most part. If you haven't played first edition of this game, fucking don't. It's a mess. We've already talked about the movement and jumping rules in depth here, but suffice to say, Cubicle 7 took the bones of this game, and I'm sure that was part of the agreement, is they had to keep it, they couldn't change it, which is why they're making the other 40k RPG right now with the D100 system. So I don't fault them in any way. I think they did a great job of that. They've added more books, far more than Ulysses did, so they've definitely done more than they did with this. So I think they deserve some commendations for that, because I think they did a good job. So I think there's still a little bit of complexity here in some degrees. I think there's too many combat actions, especially for what they do. But I think the core dice mechanic and dice pool system is fun, and with one of the dice being a different color, it's very easy to know this was a crit or a fail. So I like that. I think playing at the table, we experienced this a little bit back when we played in person with first edition, is that it's going to slow down because you have to count up successes, whereas Foundry was doing that for us, which again is super helpful. But I think the core mechanic, even if it does take a little longer at the real table, I think it's a fun mechanic as a player. And even as a GM, to roll a bucket of dice, I think is always fun. But it doesn't get out of control. Like, the most we ever rolled was like 10 or 12 dice in most cases. So I think for the most part, and maybe that's because we were just tier 2, but I think for the most part it was a good level of that. And our last crunch. Considering all of the rules, mechanics, and options, how complex did the system feel? 1 being extremely rules light, one of the simplest games ever, and a 5 being extremely rules intensive, one of the most complex games out there. A bit of a spread, but all in the middle here. Sean gave it a 2, rules light, fairly easy to pick up, does not require much teaching. Myself and Kyle, I'm sorry, I think I messed up the colors here. I don't know. Myself and Kyle gave this a 3, average, not too difficult to grasp, but not the simplest either. And then Matt and Eric gave this a 4. Rules intensive, while not the most complex, there's still a lot to wrap your head around. I might have mixed my score with somebody else's here, but for the most part, it's not the simplest game out there. It's not the hardest game out there. I think we're all in agreement. The core rules are fairly easy to understand and pick up. So that's not too bad. But there's some depth there with combat actions and criticals and complications. When you add it all together, there's a good amount there. And then I think another part of the complexity comes with conditions, which I think RPGs have to have. I don't think that's a bad thing. But the other part, I think, is with the weapons and armor. Because gear in this game has like so many layers to it, with keywords and effects and special abilities, which is cool, but it's another thing that you have to know, where if you're coming from a simpler or quote-unquote simpler game, you might not have to deal with that. So that'd kind of be my 2 cents on that. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to add to that assessment.
I will say that I really enjoyed that, like, there were different gameplay mechanics, but we went through them pretty much one at a time. Like, we got combat down, and then once we started getting like wealth, influence, and scrap, then we started doing acquisitions. And then after that was like we started getting into the space battles. So there are a lot of different mechanics involved, but we were kind of tackling them one at a time so we could kind of suss them out. So like it's doable, but yeah, there's like a bunch of them.
That's
like
funny too, because it was unintentional the way that happened, but I can see how that went too. And listeners, just to make it clear, the Starship rules, again, completely something I made and added to this, so that's not part of the core game. And the whole orc scrap and tribe growth, that was something I came up with on the fly for the players for this particular game. So those are not core rules. Just want to make sure people are clear on that. But again, hopefully a little inspiration or example of some cool things you can do based on what your group is up to. But yeah, I'm more interested. I'm interested to hear what Kyle and Matt have to say about this, because I guess Eric too, because Sean has played this with me when the first edition came out with other Matt and Travis, who was here for our Space Marine episode. So I am interested to see, if you guys have not played a system like this before, what you guys thought of the mechanics and crunch and things like that.
Yeah, I thought it was fairly complex. I liked it a lot. Like, I like complex and reading rule books and all that jazz, so I still stamped it as being pretty much up there, even though I mean, I didn't like feel like it was a burden to contend with. But I'd say, I think with RPGs in general, they tend to kind of have that same weight to them. I know for a lot of people, the gold standard is, you know, D&D, so kind of
Boo
comparing
hiss.
it to that, it's maybe even a little easier in some ways.
Oh, I would say this game
lot of
is
ways.
far easier than 5th edition. No doubt in my mind. Even with how complicated this shit gets, yeah. Especially now because there's so much stuff for D&D 5th, with all the like arcana and extra classes and stuff. You know, getting a new ability pretty much at every level. So
Yeah, I've been reading a bit through Pathfinder 2e, which is like definitely a lot more complex, which is interesting. But yeah, I think it's pretty solid. Like you said, acquisitions and things is kind of interesting. I think that threw me for a loop, just of kind of like being a twist on how you would normally do something. That I think makes sense, because economies in some of these sorts of games can get weird if you're like doing big adventures and, you know, shooting 10 guardsmen and taking all 10 of their guns and selling them to buy a giant like
yeah,
10-barrel
yeah.
super blaster. Like, that's not a sustainable thing. We need to, that has to be reeled in some sense.
And
So,
I have to give
work.
Cubicle 7 props again here, and Sean can attest to this as well. The acquisition rules in 1st edition are another fucking disaster.
Awful.
They don't give you any hard and fast rules other than the framework, like make an influence test and here's the dice you roll. But like giving you rarity levels and how that should affect the test, they give you very basic, like, well, if it's more rare, it should be harder to do. But if that's going to be how you deal with your economy and how your players are going to gain loot, if you're going to give it rules, give it the full set of rules. Don't give it partial rules and then hand wave the specifics. Because a game, an RPG like this, the rules should be there so that if the GM and the players need to know something specific, then the rules are there and you've put them in place. And if you haven't, then that's fine, but decide that ahead of time. If you're going to decide, you know what, leave it up to the GM to decide how to do gear, that's fine, right? If that's what you say at the start. But don't say, here's a system for how to acquire gear, here's the rules for how to do it, but here's not all of the rules. The rest is up to the GM. Good luck. Here's a few points of guidance. So Cubicle 7, you get a fucking gold star for that, for doing something so simple and basic. You added rarity levels to the gear, and you gave them number values. How fucking simple, and yet Ulysses could not do that. So again, don't play the 1st edition of this game. Just jump straight to this one, because it's way better. Way better. And before I have an aneurysm about complaining about that or jumping rules again, one last thing, I'll let each player answer this. Would you recommend this system to other players? Why or why not, with all things considered? I'll start off here. If you're looking to play more of a heroic style game, especially something akin to, I would say, D&D or Pathfinder, where character death is probably not going to happen or it's tough to come by. Or if you want a game that focuses on the Imperial perspective, or if you want a game where you get to throw lots of dice but not too many dice, then yes, I recommend this game. However, if you want a game that's deadlier or grimmer, there's some mutilation in this game for sure, and there's corruption, which we didn't focus too much because this wasn't a chaos-based campaign. But if you want to experience like a deadly game like Warhammer Fantasy or Alien levels of fatality, this is not the game for you. And if you want to experience this from a different perspective other than the Imperium, while the book can do that and it has some of that stuff in place, I think Cubicle 7 needs to focus on adding some of that. I know there's, I think, some Eldar stuff coming down the pipeline, but like, you know, most of this we were using fan-based stuff. So if you want to play an orc campaign, it's doable, but it takes a little bit more effort than, especially a first-time GM might be capable or comfortable with doing. And if you want Starship rules, just go play Rogue Trader over this game, for sure. I would recommend that 100% more. But so it depends what you want. I personally, I would not come back to this unless my group really wanted to. I would rather play one of the D100 systems or the new one that's coming out, so we'll see how that goes. But that's my 2 cents on it. Kyle, how about you? As a new player to this system in this universe.
I don't know. I feel like it kind of got spoiled because how I got introduced with you guys, we went from Gallows Geist on Roll20 to Gallows Geist on Foundry. And the Warhammer Fantasy system on Foundry is just so like tight, and the interface is so nice, and everything's like kind of all laid out. So going from that was like really nice. And Madboyz, it's kind of like you can see echoes of it. But yeah, there's something about this that there's a bit more difficulty to it. For me anyway, it gets a bit more complicated, especially when it comes to like, you're not just like Warhammer Fantasy, you're just on the planet, right? You're in the land. But like this is, we have a whole system to contend with. There's space, there's different planets, different atmospheres. There's a lot to kind of put together.
Do you think it would feel different if you were just on one like planet or in one city for most of the campaign? Do you think that's part of it?
I guess, but then once we started kind of hopping planets, it became clear that it sort of felt like the whole star system was its own land, because certain planets had certain things going on, so we were just kind of hopping from place to place. I'd say if this is like your first one, maybe try something else. I feel like I only kind of got semi-proficient at this because I played fantasy before. Like,
and that's interesting, because
I
I think Warhammer's way more complex than this.
Yeah.
Oh,
But-
well, I mean, maybe that's, I don't know. Yeah, for me, it just, I don't know. There was just something about it where I think I had multiple pages open at the same time, just trying to remember stuff and figure things out.
But I think
mean,
part of it too, like when you say Foundry feels tighter for Warhammer, I think that's true to a degree, because with this, the dice shifting mechanic I don't think is that difficult to comprehend, but doing it in Foundry feels a little clunky compared to Warhammer, which doesn't have that. I don't think it's bad. I think they've done a fine job in Foundry, but I think comparably, like you gotta click this dice, then right click, then do shift, then do this, then do that, like, and yeah, because there's different ways to do all of that within a single roll. It's a little harder to do that in game, whereas if we were sitting at a table, you'd be like, okay, I'm gonna put these 3 dice here, that's for damage, this one here, that's for quality, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, in fantasy, I was playing a pretty easy character to navigate through the world, and there wasn't any sort of like for instance, I was Grave Scorcher, but I was also the ships in the space battle, and trying other orc boys, and so there was a little bit of probably more complexity that I was directly involved in rather than in fantasy.
Gotcha. Okay. How about Eric and Matt? You guys are 40K veterans, but as far as I know, this is your first time playing Wrath and Glory, so what do you guys think? Would you recommend it or not? Why or why not?
I think I mostly would. I think there's a few times where I'm like, I know I've done this a million times, but I don't remember how I'm supposed to like add this all together.
That's
So I think some systems kind of do some of that are easier. But like when we were doing, I mean, I think it was mostly in combat, like trying to figure out like, okay, I took this much damage. I have to remove my resilience, but not my, or add my AP, or like, there's just a lot of stuff going on with combats. But I just found myself like doing more math than I thought was necessary.
fair. Okay, that's fair.
And then I think I like the D6 systems. I think I prefer like a D100 or a D20. But the D6 system is kind of like just like an easy, like, okay, like I just need to roll these sixes to get, extra bonuses. It kind of helps to make that a little bit easier if you're rolling that many dice to kind of like, okay, I'm looking for the specific
Sure.
thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's kind of
Yeah.
in the middle for me.
Okay. Well, that's fair. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I think chucking a bunch of d6s feels very 40k. I like how that like meshes thematically. But yeah, my other thoughts I think pretty much echo what Chris said. Where it's like if you want to play in the 40k universe and play big heroes and have a big ass rulebook, this is a great way to do it. And that's, I think, pretty much it. Like if you want something simpler, it's fairly complex, is right kind of in the middle of all the other big rulebook kind of games. And yeah, it works.
Well, luckily, if you want to play other 40k stuff, there is a plethora of RPGs thanks to the Fantasy Flight line. There's 5 other systems from Fantasy Flight, and there's a new one, D100 system, coming out from Cubicle 7, which the pre-order's going on, so the PDF is out. So you got plenty of choices, even for stuff that's out of print. It shows up on Humble Bundle all the time. You can get some of it here and there. So, yeah, if you want to be a Rogue Trader or a Space Marine or Chaos or Imperial Guard, there's lots of options there if you're not going to use Wrath and Glory. I hope Wrath and Glory will be there one day. I think it's an interesting and smart idea to try to put it all into one. If they're not, rather than have 5 separate game lines, put it all into one. I think that makes sense. And if they can pull it off and get some more source books over the next couple of years, I would hate to see them like lose the license, or God forbid it goes to another company and we only have like rules for Imperials and Eldar, but we never get rules for like Orcs or Chaos or whatever. So hopefully we'll get there at one point. So yeah. And then, Sean, you're my fellow war veteran from this game, having drug Guardsman Gary through the fucking war zone
What a king.
of first edition to get here. So, I'm very curious to see what you think. Would you recommend it or not?
Yeah, I enjoy the system. I think it's fun. It's not, in my opinion, like as complex as like Warhammer Fantasy, which is, pretty crunch heavy. You always have to find out like, oh, am I 10 feet away from a guy? Does that subtract my roll by 10%? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this game, it's just like, all right, you're close enough. Roll your 15 dice. All right, you got 36 hits somehow. All right, you now do an extra 18 damage. And so, and it's a lot more sort of theater of the mind, so you can do a lot more less concrete things. So I think it's a good system to jump into for like your first or second times if you just want to follow the rules and play like a Space Marine. Just go around gunning down orcs inside their own ship.
Tyler, anything you want to add? I know you've only been here for 2 sessions, but I don't think you've played this system before either. So just with the small experience you have, I think it's worth hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, I think what the guys have said about the the Wrath and Glory dice being managed by a foundry obviously probably makes it I guess I can't tell because I haven't played it in real life, but that's something to wrap your head around, and having the game manage that is probably more helpful. the space combat stuff was awesome, but again, I know that's not a part of the official rules. I did play Rogue Trader, and I really feel like I don't remember enough about it to see how similar Rogue Trader was way back when we played it.
Well, that was a D100 like Warhammer is.
Okay.
So it was very similar to how. I mean, yeah, it's very similar to how Warhammer works.
System, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't even remember, but yeah, I'm just listening to what the guys are saying about how the weapons could kind of just it could blow people away with them, and I experienced that firsthand, obviously.
Let me ask you this. So you've had very limited experience with this. After your 2 sessions, do you think you have a basic understanding of the core mechanic of how to roll dice and make a roll?
As far as the pushes go, yeah.
Well, the assemble a dice pool, roll your dice, and then shift dice, and like what counts as successes versus the difficulty number.
Yeah, I'd answer a 3 on my level of assuredness. 3 out of 5.
Well, after 2 sessions, I think that's okay. So, especially not really having sat down and explained it, just kind of throwing you to the wolves. So.
Yeah, and obviously playing, the ships was a little different than being on the ground, but
Yeah. Cool. Well, there you have it, folks. 29 episodes of Greenskin Glory, or Wrath and Glory. I hope you all have enjoyed this wacky adventure. As I've said, this was one of the most, if not the most fun campaign I've ever run. So I did really enjoy it, despite some of my complaints of the system. And I hope you've enjoyed the wackiness along the way. Let us know if you want to come back to the Virgo system and see what else we've got cooking here, or if you'd like to see the continuation of the Greenskin story. Did Locktar survive? Is Mulgrim still out there? Is Peppa going to make a good war boss? Will Scorcha finally get his pancakes that he wants? We need answers to these questions. So let us know if you want to see that or what other systems you want to see. And thank you all. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a blast bringing this to you, and I hope you've enjoyed it or been inspired to try something different or new, or if we entertained you just for a single episode or got you to chuckle at some of the zaniness these guys came up with, then we have accomplished what we have set out to do. So thank you all so much, and we will see you next week as we start getting into Blade Runner. So as always, same time, same place next week. Before we do a nighty-night, can I get a little bit of a wah from my players here? We don't need to rumble like we're at Games Workshop, but I think a good wah would be a good way to go, if you all please.
On 3?
Oh, shit.
Wow.